Shri RamaKrishna Namo Namaha. At first I offer my prayers in the lotus feet of Lord Shri RamaKrishna. I also offer my humble respect to all of you. Today from the book Sayings of Shri RamaKrishna, we will be listening on egoism and the realization of a man. His holy words are as follows. The sun can give heat and light to the whole world, but he cannot do so when the cloud shut out his rays. Similarly, as long as egotism veils the heart, God cannot shine upon it. Egotism is like a cloud which keeps God hidden from our sight. If it vanishes by the mercy of the Guru, God is perceived in all his glory. For instance, you see in the picture that Shri Ramachandra, who is God, is only 2 or 3 steps ahead of Lakshmana, the Jiva, but Sita, Maya, coming in between the two, prevents Lakshmana from having the view of Rama. Sir, why are we in bondage like this? Why do we not see God? Man's ego itself is Maya. If it veils that shuts out the light, verily, with the death of the eye, all trouble cease. If by the grace of the Lord a man once gains the knowledge that he is not the doer, then he assuredly becomes a Jiva Mukta, one freed in this very life and transcends all fear. If I hold this cloth before me, you cannot see me any more. Though I am still as near as you ever, so also though God is nearer to you than anything else, because of the screen of egotism you cannot see him. As long as there is egotism, neither self-knowledge nor liberation is possible, and there is no cessation of birth and death. Rice, pulse, potatoes and other things put in cold water in an earthen vessel can be touched with the hand until they are heated on fire. The same statement applies to the Jiva. This body is the earthen vessel. Wealth and learning, caste and lineage, power and possession are like rice, pulse and potatoes. Egotism is the heat. The Jiva is made hot by egotism. Rainwater never stands on high ground, but runs down to the lowest level. So also the mercy of God remains in the hearts of the lowly, but drains off from those of the vain and the proud. Egotism is so injurious to man that as long as it is not eradicated, there is no salvation for him. Look at the young calf and the troubles that come upon it through egotism. As soon as it is born, it cries, "Ah, I am, I am." The result of the egotism is that when it grows up, if it is in an ox, it is yoked to the plough to drag carts full of heavy load. If a cow, it is kept tied to post and is sometimes even killed and eaten. But still, in spite of all this punishment, the animal does not lose its egotism, for drums that are made of its hide produce the same sound of hum. The creature, does not learn humility until the cotton cardder makes bowstrings out of its entrails, for it is then that the animal's intestines sing out, "To who thou art, the I must go and give place to thou," and this is not achieved until man becomes spiritually awakened. Freedom will come when our I-hood vanishes and you yourself are merged in the divinity. When does a man attain salvation? Only when his egotism dies. When shall I be free? When that I vanishes from you. I and my, this is ignorance. Thou and thine, that is true knowledge. The true devotee always says, "O Lord, thou art the doer. Thou dost everything. I am a mere instrument in thy hands. I do whatever thou makest me do. All this thy glory, this home and this family are thine, not mine. I have only the right to serve as thou ordainest." The vanities of all others may gradually die out, but the vanity of a saint regarding his sainthood is hard indeed to wear away. The cup in which garlic juice is kept retains the odor, though washed several times. Egotism is such an obstinate aspect of ignorance that it never disappears completely, however hard you may try to get rid of it. The dyspeptic knows only too well that our sour things are injurious to him, but such is the force of association that the sight of them is enough to make his mouth water. So even if one tries hard to surpass the idea of I-ness and mindness, yet when one begins to act, the unripe ego asserts itself. There are few who can attain samadhi and get rid of the aham, the feeling of I within. Generally, it does not go. You may reason and discriminate without end, yet this I comes back again and again. Today you may cut down the peepal tree, but tomorrow you will see it sprouting again. Those who seek name and fame are under a delusion. They forget that everything is ordained by the great dispenser of all things, and that all is due to the Lord and Lord alone. The wise man says always, "It is thou, O Lord, it is thou," but the ignorant and the deluded say, "It is I, it is I." There are two types of egos, one ripe and another unripe. Nothing is mine. Whatever I see or feel or hear, nay, even this body itself is not mine. I am always eternal, free and all-knowing. Such ideas arises from the ripe ego. That is my house, this is my child, this is my wife, this is my body. Doubts of this kind are the manifestation of the unripe ego. The ego that asserts I am the servant of God is characteristic of the true devotee. It is ego of Vidya and is called the ripe ego. What is mischievous I? The I which says, "What don't they know me? I have so much money. Who is so wealthy as I am? Who dares to surpass?" If one ponders over this word I, trying to track it down, one sees that it is only a word which denotes egotism, but it is extremely difficult to shake it off. So one must say, "You wicked I, if you will not go by any means remain as the servant of God." The ego that feels itself to be the servant of God is called the ripe I. Shankaracharya had a disciple who had been serving him for a long time, but was not still given any instruction by him. Once, while seated alone, Shankara heard the footsteps of someone coming behind. So he called out, "Who is there?" The disciple answered, "It is I." The Acharya thereupon said, "If this I is so dear to you, then either expand it to infinity, which means know the universe as yourself, or renounce it altogether." If you find that you cannot drive off this feeling of I, then let it remain as the servant I. There is not much to fear from the ego, which is centered in the thought, "I am the servant of God, I am his devotee." Sweets cause dysphagia, but not sugar candy, which is an exception. The servant I, the eye of a devotee, the eye of a child, each of these is like a line drawn with a stick on the surface of water. This I does not last long. Just as sugar candy has no unwholesome effect like other sweets, so also the ripe ego, which considered itself to be the servant of worshipper of God, causes none of those evil consequential characteristics of the unripe ego. On the other hand, it leads to God and signifies that one has progressed in bhakti yoga or the path of devotion. What is the nature of the feelings and impulses of one who has the attitude of the servant I? If this conviction is true and sincere, then there remains only the form, the appearance of his former feelings and impulses. Even if the ego of the servant or the ego of the devotee remains, one who has realized God can hurt none. The whole sting of individuality vanishes from him. The sword becomes gold by a touch of the philosopher's stone. It retains its former shape, but can no longer hurt anyone. If you feel proud, let it be in the thought that you are the servant of God, the Son of God. Great men have the nature of children. They are always children before Him, so they are free from pride. All their strength is of God and not their own. It belongs to Him and comes from Him. A person who is convinced that everything is done by the will of God feels himself to be a mere tool in his hands. He is then free from all bondage even in this very life. Thou dost thy work, Lord, but man says, I do it. As long as one says, I know or I do not know, one looks upon oneself as a person. My Divine Mother says, it is only when I have effected the whole of this aham, I-ness in you, that the undifferentiated absolute, my personal aspect, can be realized in Samadhi. Till then, there is the I in me and before me. After a process of severe struggle with one's lower nature and the assiduous practice of spiritual discipline leading to self-knowledge, one attains the state of Samadhi. Then the ego with all its strain vanishes. But it is very difficult to attain Samadhi. The ego is very persistent. That is why we are born again and again in this world. So long as one is not blessed with the vision divine, so long as the touch of the philosopher's stone has not transmuted the base metal in one into gold, there will be the illusion of feelings, I am the doer. And until this illusion ceases, there will persist the idea that gives the sense of distinction between I have done this good work and I have done that bad work. Maya means this sense of distinction, and it is because of it that the world continues. One reaches him if one takes refuge in Vidya Maya, that aspect of divine power having the preponderance of sattva, which leads one by the right path. He alone crosses the ocean of Maya. Who comes face to face with God realizes him. A man is truly free, even here in this embodied state, if he knows that God is the true agent and he by himself is powerless to do anything. With the sense of I never die away completely, the petals of the lily drop off in time, but they leave their mark behind, so the ego of a man entirely disappears when he realizes God, but traces of its former existence remain. This, however, does not produce any evil effect. The true wise man is he who has seen the Lord. He becomes like a child. The child, no doubt, seems to have an individuality, a separateness of its own, but that individuality is a mere appearance, not a reality. The self of the child is nothing like the self of the grown-up man. Some great souls who have reached the seventh or the highest plane of Samadhi and have thus become merged in God consciousness are pleased to come down from the spiritual height for the good of mankind. They keep the ego of knowledge, the aham of vidya, which is the same as the higher self. But this ego is a mere appearance. It is like a line drawn across water. As a piece of rope, when burnt, retains its form but cannot serve to bind, so is the ego which is burned by the fire of supreme knowledge. A man dreams that someone is coming to cut him to pieces. Frightened, he awakens with a groan and sees that the door of his room is closed from within and that no one is inside it. Even then, his heart continues to beat fast for some minutes. So does our abhimana or sense of I leave behind it some momentum even when it has departed. After the attainment of Samadhi, some still retain the ego, the I of the servant or worshipper of God. Sankaracharya kept the ego of Vidya for the purpose of teaching others. Hanumanji was blessed with the vision of God with form and without it, but he retained the ego of a servant of God. Such was also the case with Narada, Sanaka, Sananda and Sanat Kumar. A devotee asked, were Narada and others only bhakt or were they jnanis also? The master, Narada and others had attained the highest knowledge, Brahmagyan, but still they went on like the murmuring water of the rivulet, talking and singing the praises of Lord. This shows that they too kept this ego of knowledge, a slight trace of individuality, to mark their separate existence from the deity for the purpose of teaching others the saving truths of religion. Once the master asked a disciple of his in a playful mood, well, do you notice in me any abhimana? Have I any abhimana? The disciple, yes sir, a little, but that little has been kept for the following purposes. First, for the preservation of the body. Secondly, for the practice of devotion to God. Thirdly, for mixing with the company of devotees. And fourthly, for giving instructions to others. At the same time, it must be said that you have retained it only after a good deal of prayer. I mean, the natural state of your soul is capable of being described only by the word samadhi. Hence I say that abhimana or egoism which you possess is the result of your prayer. The master, yes, but it has been retained not by me, but by my divine mother. It lies with my divine mother to grant the prayer. Thus concludes the holy Gospels of Swami Shri RamaKrishna on egoism of man and his realization. Thank you for listening. Shri Radha Krishnai Namo Namaha.